Hello and welcome. Today I'll present a breakdown from the book of Leviticus, chapters 24 and 25. Now they offer profound insights into the laws and commandments given to the people of Israel. I hope this helps us better understand the significance and the implications of these ancient texts. 24, 1-4, focuses on the lamps. Now the Lord commands Moses to instruct the people of Israel to bring pure oil from beaten olives for the lamps, ensuring that the lights are kept burning regularly. Aaron is tasked with arranging the lamps from evening until morning before the Lord. One of the reasons for this continual task is that the lamps were the only source of light in the tabernacle. Also, the continual light of the tabernacle pointed to the coming Messiah. John 8:12, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Verses 5-9 focus on the bread of the tabernacle. Now Moses is instructed to take fine flour and bake 12 loaves, which are to be set in 2 piles on the table of pure gold before the Lord. Pure frankincense is placed on each pile as a memorial portion of food offering to the Lord. And every Sabbath day, Aaron arranges the bread before the Lord, and it is to be eaten by Aaron and his sons in a holy place. 10-16 describe the punishment for blasphemy. Now, 10-12, a man of Egyptian and Hebrew descent who left Egypt with the Israelites committed blasphemy against God and curses. Now, the man who committed blasphemy, which means to attack someone, especially God, with words, was a foreigner who lived among them. Now, the laws of Israel were not necessarily applied to the foreigners as well as the Israelites. So the question was, does the law against blasphemy apply the same way against foreigners who choose to live among us? The laws of Moses protected the foreigner. We see that in Exodus 23:9, but they needed guidance to understand to what extent the laws of Israel applied to a foreigner who lived among them. The man's sins stemmed from equating the God of Israel with Egyptian gods. God clears up the confusion. Verses 13-14, the Lord instructed Moses to take the man outside the camp, where those who heard him would lay their hands on his head, and the congregation would stone him. Execution by stoning served as a warning and demonstrated that the man who had sinned against both God and the community. The principle of justice and mercy showed that those entering the kingdom of God must renounce other lordships and accept its laws. The root of this man's sin was that he considered the God of Israel to be the same as the petty Egyptian gods. 17-23 discusses punitive justice, stating that anyone who takes a life shall be put to death, and anyone who takes an animal's life shall make retribution. The principle for eye to eye, for tooth to tooth, was intended to limit punishment, ensuring that judgments were not based on personal discretion. This is the fundamental principle of punishment according to measure. This principle was the same law for the stranger and for the one from your own country. Now, God commanded execution by stoning for several reasons. First, stones were plentiful. But more importantly, the law required financial retribution rather than physical retribution. The law did not mean that the eye of an offender would be literally gouged out of his head if he took the eye of another man. The law of Moses had a system of financial restitution in these cases. For example, if a slave loses an eye of the one responsible is not to be plucked out, but rather the slave is to be given his freedom as compensation for the eye. We see that in Exodus 21:26. And Jesus addresses this in Matthew 5:38-42, where emphasizing love, forgiveness, and going the extra mile over equal retribution. Chapter 25, 1-7 begins with the Sabbath year. The Lord instructs Moses to tell the people of Israel that the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years they may sow their fields and prune their vineyards, but the 7th year is a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land. The Sabbath of the land shall provide food for everyone, including slaves, hired workers, and sojourners, as for whatever grew on its own was for them. The next is the year of Jubilee, verses 8-17. Every 50th year is to be consecrated as a Jubilee. It's a time of liberty and economic rest throughout the land. It involves the release of debt, the restoration of property to the original owners, and the return of individuals to their families and land. months. Now, this year is consecrated as holy, marking a period where neither sowing nor reaping is permitted, drawing reliance on God's provision. Then redemption of property, 23 to 34. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity as it belongs to the Lord. If someone becomes poor and sells part of their property, their nearest redeemer shall come and redeem it. If the seller becomes prosperous, they may redeem the property themselves. And if not, the property remains with the buyer until the year of Jubilee. Next we have 35 to 40, talks about kindness for poor brothers. If a brother becomes poor and cannot maintain himself, he shall be supported as though he were a stranger and a sojourner. Now, no interest or profit is to be taken from him, and he shall not be made to serve as a slave. Instead, he shall be treated as a hired worker until the year of Jubilee. Lastly, remember a poor man. Verses 47 to 55. If a poor man sells himself to a stranger or sojourner, he may be redeemed by one of his brothers, uncle, cousin, or a close relative. And the price of redemption is calculated based on the years of service until the year of Jubilee. If not redeemed, he and his children shall be released in the year of Jubilee. Leviticus 24 emphasizes the importance of maintaining the lamps, the bread in the tabernacle, and severe consequences for blasphemy, and the principle of punitive justice. Leviticus 25 introduces the Sabbath year and the year of Jubilee, promoting rest for the land and liberty for its inhabitants. Now, together these chapters reflect the Lord's desire for holiness, justice, and mercy. I'll wrap it up for today. I hope these chapters are a bit clearer. Thank you for tuning in, and may God bless you all.